Welcome back to Sunday Vibes, one and all. As you can tell, we're not in the pub. It's a shame, I know, but we've had some issues behind the scenes. Hopefully we're back in a pub. We're not sure which pub yet next week, but boy, are my spirits a little bit. Joining me today, Christopher Hamill. How are you, hamster?
I'm okay, Joseph. Much like the rest of the world, feeling a little bit anxious right now because of the whole Russia-Ukraine conflict. Thoughts go out, first and foremost, to everyone in Ukraine and everyone who's bordering Russia right now. What about you, mate? Okay?
Yeah, not too bad, except for the old cans. The state of these headphones right now. The AirPods died just before we started shooting. Christopher's OBS has died 3 times. But joining us today, to boil my spirits even further, Dougie Critchley. Dougster, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. Yeah, I've enjoyed, firstly, thoughts, echoing Chris's thoughts about Ukraine, obviously. But yeah, enjoyed the football this week. We've got a title race on our hands. We've got like a seven-way battle maybe for relegation to join. Potentially Norwich and Watford. The Champions League's been back as well. I'm feeling good about the football world at least.
Yeah, we're here to entertain. We're here to take everyone's thoughts and minds off of things at large, aren't we, Joseph?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's do a little bit of that then. Let's talk about some football topics. And we often get accused, I would say, on Football Daily, of focusing too much on the big teams. I would potentially say slightly unfairly, because obviously we do have to get some clicks in through the door, don't we? But you know what? We wanted to pivot it today and look at some of the teams that are flying under the radar. Now, this was actually inspired by a comment on winners and losers earlier in the week. And it was from Liam Williamson, who says, I think there needs to be a Southampton explained on the last 10 years in the future of our club in brilliant form at the moment, maybe even a Sunday vibe. So Liam, we've taken that on board. We may as well start with Southampton, a team that are definitely flying under the radar this season. Hassan Hüttl doing a brilliant job there, hamster.
Yeah, a little uptick in form of late. Find themselves 10th in the Premier League, don't they? Despite not having a prolific goal scorer. JWP carrying the weight there. I think he's got 6 goals. Broja 6, Chatham 6. So very much a team effort, more than the sum of their parts. One of our favourite phrases on this show. And like Liam alluded to, there is a new ownership group. So things feel fresh. Things feel anew, both on and off the pitch. It's Sport Republic that have taken ownership over the club. At the heart of it, Dragan Solak, a Serbian media tycoon, a billionaire as well to boot, so comes with some financial clout. And interestingly, in that setup, in that executive team, comes Rasmus Ankersen of Brentford and Midtjylland fame. Now, people that are, into their statistical analysis, into the Moneyball side of sports, will be familiar with him because he carried out director of football roles at Brentford, at Midtjylland, who sort of pride themselves on picking up bargains, don't they? Undervalued footballers and flipping them 2 or 3 years later for mega bucks and rinse repeat, basically. So he's come in to steady the ship football operations wise. It'd be exciting to see what he does there. But, lest we forget, I think it was the 15-16 season when Southampton almost pipped Manchester United to that 6th place position. They are one of those clubs that every couple of years seems to give it a good go with regards to a run at the Europa League places. Now, I'm not sure if they'll be that side anytime soon. I think Hassan Hüttl is overperforming with his current squad. But at least, Southampton fans are positive, and they seem to be getting back to that identity of giving young talent a go, right? And like bleeding Livramento, bleeding Broja. So I'm excited to see what they do over the next couple of years, and sort of I'm excited to see what youngsters flock to them as a result of this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think not enough credit is given to Ralph Hasenhüttl for the job he does there on such a limited budget. I think it was only around £30 million spent in the summer, wasn't it? And a large portion of that, of course, went on Adam Armstrong, who hasn't had the impact I think a lot of Southampton fans were hoping he would. Other players have been able to step up into the breach. Like you said there, Christopher, they are more than the sum of their parts. Who would have suggested that Kyle Walker-Peters could have such an impact on this Southampton team as a left-back when they signed him from Tottenham Hotspur? He has just been brilliant in terms of versatility. I think they found a real diamond in the rough in Mohamed Salisu, who joined for, £10 million? That seems like a really smart bit of recruitment now. And other players have stayed, which I think is an underrated point with this Southampton team. The ability to keep hold of James Ward-Prowse and get him to agree to a 5-year contract in the summer when there were offers on the table from the likes of Aston Villa, who were sniffing around to the tune of £30 million plus, kind of isn't written about enough because he's such a vital player to this team. I think only Salisu has put up more minutes this season for Ralph Hasenhüttl that, you know, he basically is carrying them at points through games, isn't he, single-handedly with his set-piece delivery and his crosses. So really, really impressed by Southampton this season. Really impressed by Ralph Hasenhüttl's coaching. And to be honest with you, some of the recruitment, you look at the likes of Roman Perrault, who is just starting to find his feet even more now, looks a really good player, doesn't he? Tino Livramento looks sensational. Armando Broja, who's only scored 6 league goals this season, yes, but still has had a huge impact on this Southampton side. So all seem to have been recruited for Hasenhüttl's specific system. So hats off to him and hats off to Southampton, to be honest with you. I don't know if you've got anything to add, Dukes.
Yeah, I think they've done really well because I think in the last few years you've seen that sort of middle pack sort of really start to spend quite serious amounts of money. Look at Wolves, look at Brighton. I know, for example, that Southampton wanted Cucurella in the summer and Brighton spent, was it £15 million on him? You look at clubs like Crystal Palace spending big on Joachim Andersen, Mark Gehi, Michael Olise, etc. And these are sort of Southampton's rivals, as it were. You know, they're never really going to challenge for Europe under their current spending parameters, but they're never really going to be threatened by relegation either unless something truly disastrous has happened. So I think they've done really, really well. Solid season in the Premier League. And this new ownership should give them a chance to start competing for those 15 to 20 million pound signings that really can elevate your side quite considerably. So credit to the work they've done so far. And I look forward to seeing what happens in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a point to be made about Sport Republic. I think they're using Southampton to build a general analytics network, in sport multi-club network. Yeah, so it could be quite an interesting point for Southampton to be the base of their data analytics-led recruitment drive. And I'm excited to see what happens with that this summer.
Yeah, man. And just to add to the point that Dougie was making, the last ownership group put a £50 million cap on various transfers. I think that's the most that the club is allowed to bid on a player. Yeah. So there's a little bit more slack there. So yeah, they might not have lost out on Cucurella that Dukes mentioned prior had that ruling not been in place. So yeah, they'll be there and thereabouts when it comes to competing for these players that can take them or solidify their place in mid-table, I imagine, which hasn't been the case for the last 2 or 3 years, like shopping for strikers in the Championship, for example, which, you know, no disrespect to the likes of Che Adams, who's proved himself very useful after a couple of seasons, you know, of transitioning into a top player, but yeah, they've probably missed out on a few players that they would have got otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Adam Armstrong. Obviously, he put up the highest non-penalty expected goals of any player in the Championship last season. So sometimes it does just take a little bit of an adaptation period. You've seen the likes of Jarrod Bowen after, you know, sort of a slowish start, really start to hit the ground running now. So I am kind of excited to see what happens with him across the next couple of years. Another Premier League side that we have to talk about, I would say the kings of going under the radar at the moment, really. So much so that they are on the radar, really. But we've got to talk about Wolves, Dukes. They play tonight. We're shooting this Thursday night, so we don't know whether they won or lost against Arsenal. I imagine they lost at the Emirates, but what have you made of them?
Yeah, I think I've been really impressed, to be honest. I think in the summer we were a little bit unsure about what Bruno Lage was going to bring to the table because Nuno had done a really good job, but the end of last season was quite disappointing. I think they only won 1 of their last 5 or 6 games, and they finished 13th. Which was far lower than they had in the previous 2 seasons, which also included a run to the Europa League quarter-final, I should say. Sorry, definitely not a final. But Bruno Lage came in. He'd had experience in England as Carlos Carvajal's assistant manager and that spell at Benfica. But other than that, that was his only spell at top-level management. And he obviously got this job because he knows Jorge Mendes. But it's really worked out for them. I think first 3 games they played a much more expansive style than we're used to seeing from a Wolves side, but since then they sort of reverted back to their sort of tried and trusted sort of defensive structure, defence first system, and it's really paid off for them. I think it's only Sevilla and Man City prior to the Arsenal game who have conceded fewer goals in Europe's top 5 leagues, which is absolutely mental, and a really settled side. They've got fairly lucky with injuries, which you can't say for them in the last few years, with Johnny and obviously Jimenez getting really big injuries, but I think Cody, Kilman and Sarr have played all their games so far, and Roman Saiz has been there for 6 years as well, and you can just tell that they're used to playing that system, they're used to, you know, how each other work, etc. And Max Kilman has emerged as one of the most exciting sort of left-footed, but he actually plays on the right-hand side, English centre-backs around, and I'd love to see him included in the next England squad over potentially Tyrone Mings as well. They do need to score a few more goals. They're playing that a little bit fine, but to be this high up at this stage of the season with still an outside chance of Champions League football. I don't think they're going to make it, but Bruno Lage deserves enormous credit.
There goes the Dougie curse. Wolves will now finish fourth. Hamster, what have you made of them?
Not too much to add, really. I've been really impressed that they've been able to maintain their level of performance with, João Moutinho, 35, in central midfield, partnering Ruben Neves. I think Ruben Neves is probably back on the radar of a few bigger sides, owing to just how influential he's been this season. If we're going to talk about Salisu as one of the transfers of the season, which he absolutely is at £10 million, then Sarr in goal. I think a lot of clubs like Leicester, Everton, Tottenham, these middling teams that have European ambitions will be kicking themselves for missing out on someone like Sarr. I think he has the best post-shot XG in the Premier League at current after David De Gea. I mean, David De Gea is just in a league of his own, isn't he? So I'm just totally disregarding him because he's putting up silly numbers. But he also has saved the second most shots, or it might be in the top 3 now after David De Gea as well. So he's had to do his fair share of work and has carried it out very, very well. They obviously do have a very thin squad, so a couple of big injuries towards the end of the season could derail any European ambitions they have. But yeah, if things remain as is, then a deserved sort of Europa League spot. Who do you boys think is in a better place right now to snatch up Europa League football? West Ham, who probably have a little bit more depth, or Wolves? Who would you put your money on?
Form-wise, I'd definitely go Wolves, to be honest. But West Ham, as you say, probably have the better quality and a slightly more attacking system, which could come in handy. I don't know whether Wolves start conceding a few more goals. Raul Jimenez hasn't been at his best this year, understandably. Podence has been in and out of the side. Hwang Hee-chan got off to a flyer and then sort of slowed down a bit. And Francisco Trincao has probably not had the impact I was expecting either. So, yeah, I'd probably go West Ham favourites to finish above Wolves as it stands, but they're not in fantastic form.
Yeah, I really don't think that's spoken about enough, to be honest with you. Wolves' injury problems and how good Bruno Lage has been at overcoming them. I think to lose Pedro Neto, who was definitely their outstanding player, really, for such an extended period of time, is not spoken about, really. They've had Johnny, who is like a real club sort of stalwart, consistently injured. Willy Bolly, who I think on his day is probably their best centre-back, or was their best centre-back anyway, before the emergence of Max Kilman. He's had such horrendous injury problems. It's sad almost. Hwang Hee-chan's had that horrendous hamstring problem as well. And we're kind of just bobbed along, and now they're in 7th, and this is very much, let's not forget, this is a Wolves squad that finished 7th consecutively prior to last season, so it's pretty much the same 11. Really, if you look at it on paper, it's probably 8 of the same 11 there, isn't it? Bar Rui Patricio's obviously out. You've got a few additions going forward, slightly changed fullbacks and wing-backs, but you've still got that same core of, Cody, then Donker, available with Ruben Neves, Moutinho, Jimenez up top. It's a very similar core to the side that finished 7th consecutively, so they do know how to kind of grind out results towards the back end of the season. It would not surprise me at all that Pedro Neto's return sees another uplift and they finish sort of 5th or 6th at all, because I genuinely think Pedro Neto,
you not think he's going to take a little bit of time to work his way back to top form? No, you're backing him.
I don't. I think he comes back in, hits the ground running really quickly.
So he's back
he's going to have to, isn't he? Because they are averaging under a goal a game at the moment, and I think it's they're only conceding 0.75 goals per 90, which is pretty frightening for a club of their size or standing, and that's no disrespect to Wolves, but if they lose that immaculate defensive record, they've not got an awful lot to lean on, have they?
No, but surely at some stage this season they do start to click going forward. Like, I know that Trincao hasn't quite worked, Hwang's coming back, Pedro Neto's coming back, Jimenez surely finally finds the back of the net at some stage. It's been such a shame for him this season, hasn't it? And I'm sure that Wolves will look to reinvest in another striker, I think, in the summer. But overall, the job that Bruno Lage has done is just sensational, given that I think we all felt it was a risk coming off the back of Nuno Espirito Santo, who had a bit of a disappointing final season, and he was a slight unknown, but not an unknown to the club. Obviously, they've picked well, or a certain agent has picked well, and it's worked perfectly. Should we go outside of the Prem then? Do we want to mention?
Just shout out. I actually think Nelson Semedo deserves a little shout out, because when he looked a little bit patchy, didn't he, when he first came over? And I think he took pelters, and he's improved a lot this season. and Ryan Aït-Nouri. Like Wolves saw the potential when not many other sides in the middle of the Premier League did, and he's looked fantastic at left wing back as well. So yeah, it's not just that back three who have historically got a lot of credit for Wolves' defensive solidity. Those two really putting in the hard yards as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's travel outside of the Premier League then, and a team that would we say are flying under the radar, Dukes, with AC Milan.
Yeah, I think at the start of the year, it was a little bit unclear who was going to dominate Serie A. I think most people actually thought Juventus would have done a lot better than they did, and they've slightly picked up form since the arrival of Vlahovic and Zakaria in January. That seems like it's got, a bit more belief in that squad. When you've got an elite goal scorer and Vlahovic has really hit the ground running there, that makes a massive difference. But AC Milan, they're a work in progress. I don't think Maldini and Gazidis, their sort of technical directors and chief executive will think they're finished yet by any stretch. They probably need to improve at right back and right wing especially. Maybe add a bit of depth in midfield as well. When Benacer and Kessie left for the AFCON as well, they were a little bit short there, although Sandro Tonali's really improved. But yeah, they are, I would say, probably now is just squeaking ahead as favourites for Serie A, given that Inter have slightly hit the buffers in the last few weeks. That loss to AC Milan, they lost to Sassuolo last weekend as well, who have a really exciting front line, and then also took an unfortunate result to Liverpool in a game they played really well in. But AC Milan, Teo Hernandez goes from strength to strength. Rafa Leao has really turned it on this year.
Sensational.
And they've done it once again without Ibrahimovic really playing that major part because of his injury record. So
even though he is their top scorer.
Yeah, I mean, but that was mainly in the first half of the season. Like Milan have really surprised me this year, and I think massive respect goes to that whole sort of structure for overturning what was years of financial mismanagement, years of mediocrity, and now they're consistent Scudetto challengers. I don't think Serie A's probably at its best in terms of challenging amongst European competition, but there's 6 or 7 pretty good sides in there that are all of a similar standards, and AC Milan are on top right now.
Yeah, I was going to say they've had the recruitment has improved so much, just noticeably. Look at their most minutes played, the likes of Mike Maignan, Fikayo Tomori, Teo Hernandez, Rafa Leao, Salamakers as well. It's a noticeable improvement and transition in sort of attempted pickups or targets, isn't it? I think Franck Kessié is going to be a bit of a loss in the summer. To lose him on a free transfer will hurt AC Milan, given that he is a valuable asset and one of their more valuable assets within the squad. But I'm sure they've kind of foreseen this coming, because it would have been a while now that Franck Kessié said, look, I'm not going to be signing a new contract. There's teams on the table, talks of PSG, talks of Barcelona potentially coming in for him. But yeah, I totally agree, man. I think AC Milan to be top of Serie A at this stage of the season, obviously helped by the fact Juventus are absolute mud this year and Inter Milan are kind of bobbing along. But maybe it's not spoken about enough. Maybe that's just because we're in England that people aren't saying, AC Milan back up there. But it's pretty sensational, Hamster.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, you just mentioned Sassuolo there, Dukes. I mean, I could talk about the likes of Scamacca and Raspadori all day. Raspadori in particular, who I'm developing a real affinity for. But on the subject of, diminutive playmakers, Brahim Diaz has been fantastic as well this season. I think over 3 shot creating actions per night, a really useful season for him. He's developing into a really tidy little player after, his career at the top level, let's say, looked in balance after that ill-fated period at Real Madrid. I mean, not loads of output, and his passing and his physical attributes could definitely improve. But he's caught the eye when I've watched him. I think only 4 goal involvements actually. 6 goal involvements in the league. But I like him. I like what I see, and yeah, I would probably still put in a favourite. They've got a game in hand on them, haven't they? But yeah, it's going to be close at the top of Serie A.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other Italian teams, or do we want to move leagues? Maybe we'll have a look in Germany at the Bundesliga.
Yeah, I mean, we could maybe a brief mention of Napoli, because I think most people thought their title challenge was going to completely collapse when Osimhen's picked up so many consistent injuries this year. But when he is on the pitch, he is just, he looks like one of the best strikers in Serie A. And then they lost Anguissa for the AFCON. They lost Koulibaly for the AFCON as well. They've come back and they're still in the title challenge. So well played to Napoli, and Spalletti in particular, because he hasn't really won that much in Italy, at least. So this would be massive for him. Yeah,
absolutely. Christopher, shall we touch on the Bundesliga? Potentially Hoffenheim, who are 5th, and they are only, 4 points off of Leverkusen, doing a pretty good job?
Yeah, but to say anyone's, only 4 points off of anyone in that pack is ridiculous, because I think, 6 points separates 10th and 3rd right now. So, typically in the Bundesliga, that is the most entertaining element, isn't it? Who is going to qualify for Champions League and Europa League football? But, managed by Sebastian Hoeneß, whose only prior coaching experience was at Leipzig's under-19s and Bayern Munich's second team. So Hoffenheim sticking to their guns when it comes to promoting ambitious young managers. He definitely fulfills that category. I mean, they've been deploying mainly a three at the back. And I say that because, if I think Hoffenheim, the two standout players for me this season have been Grilic at centre-half, who can play as a central midfielder. His contract's up at the end of the season, by the way, and I anticipate, a lot of big clubs being in for him after the numbers he's put up this season. And David Raum, left wing back, over 2.5 key passes per game, 6 assists. He's just a machine down that left flank. I don't know if they're severely underrated, Hoffenheim, because I think there's not much that separates the various sides in that portion of the league, like I said. But they are really entertaining to watch. So yeah, and Grilic in particular at centre half. I mean, his passing's been ridiculous this season. I think he's hitting 7 long balls. He's effectively a quarterback, and a lot of sides could use someone with that skill set, couldn't they? Pinging balls out. We just spoke about Wolves. Maybe we'll see him go there.
Oh, potentially. Dougie, anything to add on Hoffenheim this season?
I think they've just done a pretty good job. I mean, they've played in the Champions League. They've consistently been up there for a few years, and yes, they've lost Nagelsmann, they've lost obviously Ralf Rangnick from a few years ago, and then to recreate a season challenging for Europa League football, given that managerial turnover that they've had and the lack of sort of massive investment that they've had as well in that time. I mean, they're still relying on Kramaric up top as well. Ilas Bebu stepped up a little bit up front as well. And they've got some exciting young players, as Chris says. Sami Seiko in midfield has been linked with a move around for quite a while now. So fair play to Hoffenheim for getting back up there once again.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's dip into the mailbag a bit then, because Christopher, you did put a tweet out, didn't you, asking for people's suggestions. Muad Charlie says, Betis in the Cup semis, 3rd in La Liga, still in Europe, all while playing some of the most entertaining football in Spain. 2nd best attack, brackets, in Spain, by the way. I totally agree. I think Betis, whenever I've watched them, particularly in the Europa League, just look so fun, man. I think they are still unbeaten at home in the Europa League. I'm not sure if they play at home tonight, which I've probably just jinxed. Apologies. But, this is a club who's consistently turned profits, hasn't it? It's turned close to £50 million worth of profit since 2020-2021. They're obviously 4 points ahead of Barcelona at the moment. Barca do have that game in hand, but they're playing way more attractive football than Barcelona, and they're on for 69, 70 points, I think, if they carry on this sort of form, which would be 8 points more than last year, their best tally this century. So hats off entirely to the Betis board, who've recruited really well over the last few years. The signings of the likes of Claudio Bravo, Hector Bellerin, Willian Jose, I suppose, on loan you could include in there as well, Nabil Fekir. It's really, really impressive what Betis are doing, and if they finish 3rd against ahead of Barcelona, I will be absolutely buzzing. I can see a slight mini collapse happening, but I would love to see them finish 3rd, given that expected points has them more like 7th or 8th, I think, in La Liga. So it's just fun to watch Betis at the moment. We'll go to some other ones then. Crystal Palace, Ben Holden says, who says they've set themselves up for the future nicely, Chris.
I imagine he means by signing various youngsters. Elise, Edouard, obviously Conor Gallagher is on loan. If they could retain his services, that would be unreal, but I doubt it given the form he's displaying. Mark Gehi, obviously they've brought through the likes of Tyreek Mitchell at left back as well. He's been playing incredibly well. Could definitely upgrade some pretty obvious areas. Right back being one of them, maybe centre half as well. Maybe there's you need to look for a new goalkeeper as well. Gaeta was 35, 36 now, maybe a little bit older. But yeah, there's a good spine to that squad. So I agree with Ben. And Patrick Vieira seems to be getting the best out of existing, Palace's existing assets as well. James MacArthur in central midfield, I think, is having a really underrated season. It brings a great sense of balance to that side. Wilfried Zaha is only 3 goals away from equaling his best goal-scoring campaign with 12 games left to go. So I think he's done a great job at matching his vision or ambition with existing talent and nudging it forward at a pace that's the players have been able to digest or process, because obviously it is very vastly different from the sort of ethos that Roy Hodgson was deploying. Some of their underlying numbers really promising as well. 8th for expected goals. They've not got the rub of the green to various degrees up front. The likes of Benteke is getting used to that now. Edouard, his output has been solid, but could perhaps be a little bit better. Eberechieze is obviously still finding his feet after a long-term layoff. 7th for average possession, which I found really interesting. That's not something I envisaged a year after Roy Hodgson left, or not even a year yet. But they were very happy to see possession under the Englishman, weren't they, in favour of defensive solidity before, and they've retained that defensive solidity as well. Actually, 4th best for shots conceded. So they're being smart with the ball as well and working super hard in midfield and up front. I think it's good. It's very well thought through football operation there. Shout out to Dougie Friedman as well for the recruitment. I don't think Patrick Vieira should be getting all of the plaudits.
No, absolutely. Given especially that they've been a little bit rancid in 2022. I'm going to whisper it, but they've been. Yeah. I think
good win last night.
Good win over Watford. Yeah.
Good win. But that was their first win of 2022 in the Premier League, wasn't it? And we are now rapidly approaching March, and there've been some pretty dogging performances in there as well. The 1-1 against Norwich, the 0-0 against Brentford, that 3-2 loss at home to West Ham was a bit of a killer as well, wasn't it, on New Year's Day? But I agree. I do think that with the quality of player that was bought in the summer, and I'm going to be a bit controversial here, I really think that they should be higher up the table.
Really?
I do, man. I admit that it does take time to gel, doesn't it? It takes time to that.
This feels harsh.
It takes time for that number of players to gel, but when you put that starting 11 out on paper, I think it's really strong now. When you've got your best 11 out with the likes of Gehi and Anderson at centre half, the midfield that includes Gallagher and Eze and Will Hughes, and then you've got Elise and Zaha and Edouard going forward.
How much higher do you want them then than 11th place where they are now?
Well, I just think they should have won more than 6 games, mate. Brentford have won 6 games. Everton have won 6 games.
I know, but they've only lost 9, you could say, couldn't you?
Watford have won.
On the flip side.
They've only won 1 more game this season than Watford.
But they are above Leicester and they are above Aston Villa, which we would have said was noteworthy progress at the start of the season.
But we've also said Leicester have been having a horrendous season, and that Aston Villa are massively underperforming under Steven Gerrard at the moment. So I think they're doing fine, and Palace fans will be absolutely happy with 11th. I totally agree. They're having a fine season. But I think the squad on paper is an awful lot better than a Brighton. And I know that Brighton are further down the line in their development of this squad and have Graham Potter, who's been there and figured out how he wants to play and what he wants to do with the team. But the squad is good. And I just think that he needs to start turning these draws into wins fairly rapidly, Patrick Vieira, because I think he's doing a good job. But I don't know. I'm just a bit shaky about Palace. I'm on the fence a little bit about whether or not this has been as good a season as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I think you are right to point out the recent form for sure. But I do think while a lot of the first team is really promising, they are still having to play Joel Ward at right back, who started the season really strongly. But I think most Palace fans, at least on my Twitter timeline, are like, please take Joel Ward.
Yeah, of course.
Please take him off us. But I think, and also you look at slightly their depth at centre forward as well. If Edouard's not playing, it's Benteke. Yes, I know he's had a better season this year, but he's still not the player that we saw at Aston Villa.
Yeah, but Patrick Vieira's just got
Mateta coming in.
Patrick Vieira wanted to get Mateta on a permanent, so he must back him. He must back him.
Yeah, I think Mateta's been reasonably good, to be honest, but I don't think he's the sort of... None of those strikers, except for Edouard, you'd back to get over 10 league goals if they played 38 games. I don't think. So I think they're doing absolutely fine.
And this is not me hammering them. I'm not hammering them here. I know I'm going to get some blowback in the comments. I'm going to get some blowback in the comments. I just think maybe it's recency bias, but I'm slightly underwhelmed by the record.
I'm giving a lot of credit as well for the stylistic change. I think Chris is right to point out the possession's gone up to 8th, 7th, pass accuracy around the same. They were near relegation for those stats last year, so it has been impressive in lots of respects.
Yeah, absolutely fine. I'm not going to hammer him any further. Let's do Swagato's suggestion very briefly. Should we touch on Rayo Vallecano?
Yeah, I don't think they're massively underrated anymore. They had a really great start to the season, didn't they? I think they've lost 4 of their last 5 now after a pretty explosive start to the campaign, and that start coincided with Falcao scoring 5 in his first 7, and obviously there was an air of romanticism, wasn't there, about that 36-year-old Radamel Falcao, one last hurrah. Can Rayo Vallecano, who are an extremely likeable club off the pitch, by the way, can they do the unthinkable and finish in the European places? It looks like mid-table mediocrity beckons, but that's fine. That's still a solid season. So, yeah, I think that good news story has kind of run its course already, sadly.
I noticed this next team. You must have put this in, Hamill.
Yeah.
Our Broth.
Yeah, and people a lot of Scottish football fans want us to talk about them, and I don't know if it's a fairy tale. It is a fairy tale, but also slightly embarrassing for the Scottish game that a part-time club are currently top of the Scottish Championship, and they're managed by a bloke called Dick Campbell, and the nickname is the Smokies. It's literally the Scottish version of Ted Lasso. It's class. This is a club that haven't been in the top flight since 1975, and like I said, don't have full-time. I don't know if they have full-time players on the books, but I would anticipate an EFD, explained on them if this sort of form continues. So that is a verbal promise from me.
Okay, that could be coming to your screen shockingly at some point this year, explained on our Broth. Yokes.
Footage for that's going to be tricky.
Yokes, footage is going to be tricky. The thumbnail is going to be even trickier. Yokes Tick 1 has this one. He says they get a lot of credit as it is, but I feel like Derby are one of the most inspiring teams in world football right now. Maybe on the field, not off it, Yokes. No way most clubs in their predicament at the start of the season would be in a position to stay up like they are. It's just incredible. Yeah, I mean, the Derby story, we have done an explained on it. If you haven't seen that already, I fully recommend you going and watching our What Has Happened to Derby County explained. Obviously, 21 points deduction. They have clawed themselves fully back into contention under the brilliant Wayne Rooney at the moment. Liam Rossini as well in that coaching staff. Tom Lawrence, I think, is going at 0.5 goals and assists per 90 in the Championship this season. I think he's at 14 in 28. And if they survive, I'm going to say it, I do think it is the best managerial accomplishment of the modern era. Yeah, man. To start a season with a 21-point deficit, with a squad of 10 players, with an inability to register any new players, with not being able to bring academy players into the side. He was having to buy panels for training, buy footballs for training out of his own pocket, Rooney. He was having to buy drones to be able to analyse training footage, having to buy cameras, all out of his own pocket. And then to be able to claw back a 21-point disadvantage, even during the season, his key players were getting their contracts ripped up in front of him the day before major games because Derby couldn't afford to pay wages. If they managed to maintain life in the Championship after all of that, it's insane. It is insane. I don't know how Rooney's done it. He's just got everybody pulling in the same direction. And it's a brilliant mix of really, really senior pros and then academy youngsters that have done it for him.
I think Curtis Davies is their second top goal scorer.
It's crazy.
Had on the Football Social, haven't we?
Honestly, some of the names, if you go through their squad list, you're just Phil Jagielka's still there. Having his contract ripped up. Ravel Morrison's played minutes in there, hasn't he? It's chaos. It is chaos. And I genuinely believe that it would be one of the bigger accomplishments of the modern era to keep this side up.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, when you put it out like that, it's difficult to argue. I mean, I was thinking of other sort of rivals, and people will be like Leicester City's title win. I don't know whether that was a managerial achievement as much as a very weak Premier League season and a nice combination of factors.
There,
yes.
It
was great. It was great, but I don't think it's the best managerial achievement ever. I think the Invincibles has probably got to be up there, although I don't think the Premier League was as competitive as it is now, which is one, and obviously the deficit, etc. They didn't have to deal with financial issues. I think Derby's a good shout for that, actually, Joe.
I just think the things that he's had to put up with and the way he's had to dip into his own pocket and he's had to go to his own sort of black book of contacts and call up players that he played with. He's had to go, Ravel Morrison has started, I think, 15 games in the Championship this season. This is a guy who was absolutely out in the cold from every football club in England, was chucked on the rubbish tip by teams across Europe, and Wayne's gone, okay, look, Ravel, I need you. Like, you're a talented lad, come back in. He's got 3 assists. Like, even those 3 assists are vital in a team's survival from a league that is incredibly hard to survive in at the best of times.
And credit to Rooney as well, because, he probably could have left at various points from the Derby situation, and he also was close to being offered the Everton job. I don't think he was ever offered it, but he had that offer on the table. Well, he had that potential to be offered that, so he could have angled for it harder than he did. And also, he's talked quite publicly about his battles with mental health previously in his career, where he was making wrong decisions with, drink and girls, etc. So he's really sort of shone on and off the pitch to Wayne Rooney. And if a player like Wayne Rooney can come out and say, admit to his demons and say that he's far from perfect and admit to his previous mistakes and say that he wants to get better as a person and as a coach, then I think that's a really impressive, step to take. So well done to Wayne and well done to Derby.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got one here from Luca Attard who says Inter. Do we want to talk about Inter? We've spoken about AC. Now, they did lose, let's not forget, Lukaku, Hakimi and Conte in the summer. So, I don't think... Did we expect them to be... Maybe some people even say they're better than they were last year.
Yeah, I mean, up until a few weeks ago... Sorry,
no,
Chris.
on,
up until a few weeks ago, you definitely say that they probably were. I think only PSG they'd only lost 1 game until a few weeks ago, and I think that was the best record in Europe along with PSG. And their signings have largely come off. I think Dzeko's done a lot better than most people expected. Denzel Dumfries has stepped up after a difficult start to his life at Inter. And they've got Darmian, who can change at right wing back as well. And they've been a much more attacking side than last year under Conte. And Simone Inzaghi, I think, has got the best out of this squad. So I think they have maybe slightly overachieved on what we thought at the start of the year, but they've still got some unbelievably talented players, particularly in midfield and defence.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Christopher?
No, I mean, not much more to add other than, what Doug just said, really. I was going to kind of sound out Nice as well. Christophe Galtier's Nice currently 3rd in Liga. No one's really spoke too much about them. 1 point behind Marseille, of course, 2nd. Obviously, PSG well ahead of everyone else in that regard. But yeah, they've sort of been struggling to break into the top 5, 6 for a couple of years. And I've only tuned in for a couple games, but nice to see Todibo starting to make good on his promise. I thought it was pretty unfortunate the way he was shipped out of Barcelona. Youssef Fatau at right back, we've been fans of for a long time. Even like getting star turns out of Lamina, Big Andy Delors up front, Guiri, who everyone knows is an outstanding talent. Justin Clive as well. In many ways, I can't remember what team we mentioned before. I think you spoke about Real Betis, Joe, saying that was like a home for broken toys. Well, I feel like Christophe Galtier has that as well out in Ligue 1, and he's really like squeezing every last bit of talent out of these guys, and it must be super satisfying for them to sort of prove their parent clubs wrong or their previous clubs wrong, particularly when it comes to Clive, Todibo, etc. But yeah, wanted to make sure that Nice got a nice shout out.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a couple of quick fire questions then that I'm going to propose before we go, because I know that a lot of people wanted us to talk about them. I was getting tweets and Instagram DMs about this. First and foremost, our thoughts on Antonio Conte's kind of explosive meltdown post Burnley lost, Dukes. What were your thoughts when you saw him saying, an assessment's needed by the club about my future, and I'm very disappointed?
It's not totally surprising. He's probably the most emotional Italian around, which is saying something. And I just don't know how you can flip-flop in the space of a few days, saying these are the best players that he's ever worked with in terms of personalities after that win against Man City. And then he was saying that the club need to assess. It wasn't really clear his position, their transfer. He's already complained about their transfer strategy. He's just being a bit exhausting. But this is Conte. This is what he does. He did it even at Inter Milan when they were top of the league by sort of 8-9 points. This is just what he does. But yeah, strap yourselves in, Spurs fans, because it doesn't get any easier.
Hamill, Do you think it's getting a bit much?
I mean, we're all talking about his meltdown rather than the performance or lack of performance, aren't we? Or I know he highlighted 4 losses in 5, but I suppose if he wanted to move the narrative on, away from Spurs being utter shit and to make it a little bit of a circus out of it, their mission accomplished. But yeah, there was some sort of weird messages within that. What did he say?
I agree.
The managers always change, but the players stay the same. And again, this is a week after saying that they're the best group of players he's worked with in terms of like their attitude on the training ground and how they are as human beings off the pitch. So yeah, very, very mixed messages. I don't really care that much though. I quite enjoy it. Dip my toe in every now and then, but I'm not going to get carried away with it, no.
I have to say, I think it's getting a bit much. I really do think it's starting to get a little bit whingy now, Antonio Conte. Like, I appreciate that, he is a serial winner, and he kind of says after the game, doesn't he? Like, I'm not used to this. I'm used to winning. I'm not used to 4 losses in 5. Like, what did you expect when you took charge of this squad? This squad was in a mess when you took over. You must have foreseen that there was going to be patches where you were going on losing runs. I just think to now start moaning and whining and whinging about how, it's almost like sulking. Like, just get on with it now. Just get on. You took the job. Just get on with it. Like, surely if you're a Tottenham player, there's still a chance of top 4. You want some confidence. Like, just boost it into him a little bit. Just give it a go. Feels a little bit like he's giving up whenever he's like, 4 lost in 5. The assessment's needed. I'm going to have to go. Like, if you're a player, I just feel like it would be really draining. And I'm sure it's very draining for Tottenham fans as well. And I think potentially he just needs to readdress his course of action, because we are talking about one of the best managers in world football here.
Yeah, we say this is draining, but like the players must be prepared to stick by him in the hope that he delivers, a success in the way he has before, right? A big part of them must just think this is his way, like, and not pay too much heed to it. I don't know. It is a good point though. What do they think about his tantrums after every ill-fated result? But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and they also didn't particularly respond well to when Mourinho did this. Like, it didn't really work with them. And Mourinho started doing this after, 9 months, a year.
And Mourinho didn't do this badly. Like, he was not moaning directly about this.
Conte's done this after 3 months. Like,
the only nuance there, I guess, is that Mourinho often targeted individuals, which made it seem like bullying rather than Conte just kind of vague, ambiguous, and like digging out the collective, I guess, and often throws himself in the mix, which Jose maybe didn't do. But yeah, it just makes it seem like chaos reigns at Spurs. I don't know what the ambition.
And then my final quickfire question that was probably most sent in to my Twitter account anyway was what our thoughts are on the Romelu Lukaku situation. Of course, dropped midweek for the Champions League tie, and not only dropped 7 touches prior in 90 minutes. Where do we start on this one, Dougie? So let's not go into it too much depth, but what were your thoughts about this?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was the right decision to drop him on Tuesday. I thought Chelsea generally looked a lot better. Not Hazard, sorry, that bit of proper throwback. Havertz had a pretty good game up front. Probably should have done better with a couple of his chances, but took his header really well. You just feel like right now, like a couple of players in the Prem, like Maguire as well, could probably do with a couple of games on the sidelines. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. We had Sam Tighe, a sort of European football expert on Continental Club this week, and we briefly touched on Lukaku, and he just said, look, he's played almost 2 years of just non-stop football, and he's getting towards 30. He's probably just needs a break. And I know that sounds weird for a top-level player that's performed so well for so long, but sometimes players just do experience a bit of burnout. I think Luke Shaw might have experienced a little bit of that at the start of this season as well. So I think he just needs a couple of games on the sidelines. Chelsea have to make this work. So they've spent that amount of money. They're not going to be able to recoup anywhere close to that fee. They have to make it work. I think a change of system rather than changing Lukaku is the way to go.
Hamster, do you change the system to fit Lukaku into a side that have won Champions Leagues in a certain system?
Well, it's not like Tuchel is completely wed to one system, is it? He's obviously stuck with the back 3 more often than not, since it served him really well when he sort of switched it up after I can't remember, however many games at Chelsea before they finally clicked. But yeah, against Lille, I mean, Pulisic, Havertz and Ziyech looked great as a front three, didn't they? Looked a lot more fluid than they have done in recent weeks. But I suppose what Romelu Lukaku's got going for him is that not a lot of players in that front three are performing. Yes, Havertz and Pulisic did score against Lille, but it's not as if there's a devastating combo waiting in the wings to pair up, is there? Or a trio even. That Ziyech has probably been the most consistent performer in recent weeks, and I think he's only just scored in 3 league games consecutively for the first time in his Chelsea career, right? So when they leave him out, I don't think like they're gaining an awful lot, but when he's in the side, they're not gaining an awful lot as well at the moment. So it's kind of just inertia. But I agree with Dukes. Like they've got to make it work.
Oh yeah, they do have to because
Joe wants him out.
I don't want him out. But I just think they are a better team when Havertz plays through the middle. And I think to say that a team that won the Champions League playing a very specific style of football should change to incorporate a player who's out of form is, I don't know whether it's the right way to go, but it's the way they're probably going to have to go.
Is that a bit of recency bias as well, though, just because Pulisic played well in the Champions League? He's got a couple of goals in the Champions League, hasn't he?
I don't even think Pulisic...
I know, but he's only got 2 in the Premier League, hasn't he? When he has played...
I wouldn't include Pulisic in their best 11.
Not Pulisic,
he certainly wasn't in their best 11 towards the back end of last season.
Not Pulisic, Kai Havertz has only got a couple of goals in league play as well, and he started 13, 14 games, I'm pretty sure of it.
Yeah, but I think the difference with Havertz is that his general link-up play is so superior to Romelu Lukaku
I don't know.
that it allows more functionality from players in the midfield getting forward. It allows the system to work better. When Romelu Lukaku is playing through the middle and can only get 7 touches of the ball, 2 of which is a kickoff, so 1 of which is a kickoff, I think it's a real sign that the whole system needs to change.
Yeah,
and I just don't think that's smart.
Was awful, wasn't it?
But whatever. With Lukaku, we might touch upon again. Let's see what happens this weekend. Lads, anything you want to point to before we click out of this thing?
Get excited for the Carabao Cup final. That must be kicking off in a few hours.
Yes.
Liverpool versus Chelsea. You can watch that on Sky, I assume. No, I know you can watch that on Sky. So get excited for that. We'll see what lineup Tuchel goes with. Obviously playing Liverpool in red hot form. And yeah, as I mentioned earlier, go check out Friday's Continental Club for a little continental warm up to the Carabao Cup.
That is going to be an interesting one, isn't it? Does he drop Lukaku for a cup final? Because if he drops Lukaku for the Liverpool Cup final, that's a
telling,
damning blow. Hammer, what do you make of it?
I just want to say that we'll be back in a pub very soon. We know that this is nowhere near as good remotely, and won't be going back to the dark days of lockdown 1 to 2 and shades of 3. So yeah, bear with us. It's a very temporary situation, and we will resolve it soon.
Yeah, thanks very much for watching, everybody. See you later. Bye.